The systems they design fit for the present and the future. Thinking about the future can better position us to take advantage of opportunities and minimize potential challenges. By structuring an inclusive and practical conversation about how we want the future to look and how we will get there, we support more effective policy decisions today. Now imagine a future with agile and modern social protection systems that withstand and adapt to shocks and vulnerabilities. They work in harmony with technological innovations to deliver more sustainable solutions for a climate-neutral future, for the good of everyone, helping people stay healthy, productive, and secure throughout each stage of life. Making the preferred future come true requires action, legal and policy frameworks and supportive institutions, all informed by and dedicated to the people they're meant to serve. And it takes money. But in tallying cost, policymakers must consider the very high cost of inaction. A future where each shock, whether it's a health crisis, severe storm, or loss of a job, can push up to 266 million people to poverty. Investing in social protection today by at least 3.3% of GDP is more affordable than responding to shocks in the future. Funds for social protection can be found by shifting money away from less beneficial efforts, such as fossil fuel subsidies, clamping down on fraud, improving tax systems, partnering with international funding mechanisms, and even by increasing short-term debt. Spending on social protection is a solid investment in people that delivers high returns for economies. Neglecting this investment leaves populations vulnerable, struggling to live in dignity, and unable to find advantage in the inevitable change that the future will bring.
I call the meeting to order. Excellency, distinguished delegates, we will now turn to agenda item 5. The background document for this agenda item is ESCAP/CSD8/5, accelerating the implementation of Jakarta Declaration on the Asian and Pacific Decades of Person with Disability 2023 to 2032. Under this agenda item, the committee is invited to highlight the action made towards strengthening disability inclusive development and disability rights. This agenda will begin with the panel discussions to be followed by the intervention from the floor. I am pleased to invite Ms. Chai Chai, Chief Gender Equality and Social Inclusion Sections of the Social Development Division, ESCAP, to moderate a high-level panel discussions on the implementation of the Jakarta Declaration on the Asia and Pacific Decades of Person with Disability 2023-2032.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now I'm pleased to invite our panelists to come to the stage, please. Mr. Shuling, Mr. Lim, Mr. Kun Sawalak, and Ms. Mikumi-san, and Mr. Waka. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, it's a great pleasure to moderate this panel session focusing on the Jakarta Declaration on the implementation of the Asian and Pacific Decade 2023 to 2032. Before we start the panel discussion, let me briefly introduce to you Jakarta Declaration, as some of you have not had a chance to attend the earlier high-level intergovernmental meeting which adopted Jakarta Declaration. As you can see on the slide, I would like to first mention that Jakarta Declaration was adopted in 2022 at the ESCAP high-level intergovernmental meeting hosted by the government of Indonesia. And as some of you may know that since 1993, ESCAP has been promoting the rights of persons with disabilities through 4 regional disability decades. And now we completed 3 disability decades, and the review was conducted at the high-level meeting hosted by government of Indonesia. And at that meeting, ESCAP member states decided to proclaim a new disability decade, which is the 4th decade. And the Jakarta Declaration serves as the regional framework to guide the implementation of the new decade. These slides show you the 6 priority areas for action contained in Jakarta Declaration, focusing on harmonizing national legislation with CRPD, promoting meaningful participation of persons with disabilities, improving accessibility, both the physical environment as well as digital technology. Also, to galvanize the power of the private sector to promote disability-inclusive development. It's also important to address disability data gap, as well as adopting a gender-responsive life cycle approach to developing and implementing disability-related policies and programs. I want to use this opportunity to highlight the Secretariat's work to support the implementation of Jakarta Declaration. Through a series of consultation with experts and governments, the Secretariat developed the operational guide on the implementation of the Jakarta Declaration. The operational guide focuses as a technical resource to support the implementation, lays out strategic whole-of-government actions towards disability-inclusive development with whole-of-society engagement by offering key policy elements, institutional mechanism, and capacity development that can be adapted at a national context to accelerate progress in disability-inclusive development. So this is the very important feature, whole of government and whole of society approach. It underscores the key principles of implementing the new decade and emphasize the need for coordination and integration across different government departments and agencies to ensure that disability inclusion is reflected across all sectors and levels of government. With the whole of society approach, it highlights the role of various actors beyond the government, including civil society organizations, private sector, and other development partners such as media, academia, and international organizations. In particular, organizations of persons with disabilities. So we will hear more in detail from our panelists who represents the government, the civil society, and the private sector to share how this approach can be applied in different contexts. This is my brief overview. Now let me have this great pleasure to introduce our prominent speakers with us today. Ms. Xu Ling, she is the Deputy Director General of International Affairs Department of China Disabled Persons Federation. And Kun Sawalak Tongkui, she's a member of the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And Mr. Lim Pui Tiek, he's the chair of ASEAN Disability Forum. And Mr. Waka Shahid, Senior Programs Manager of Transformational Communities International. Last but not least, Ms. Megumi Kobayashi. She's the head of overseas business of Haribani. A warm welcome to all of you to this panel session. We will have 2 rounds of questions for our panelists. The first round will set the overall landscape of disability inclusion from a whole of government and a whole of society approach. And the second round will examine challenges and opportunities in adopting a whole of society approach, capable of galvanizing actions from all levels of government and all sectors of our society, as guided by Jakarta Declaration and the operational guide. I would like politely to mention that given limited time, I would request all panelists follow the time allocation. For the first round, you have 5 minutes each. Yeah. Okay, let's now start. First, let me ask Ms. Xu Ling, Deputy Director General of International Affairs with the CDPF. Ms. Xu, China Disabled Persons Federation is a national umbrella organization with a vast network that facilitates the policy making and implementation at the central, provincial, and grassroots levels. We are aware that China passed a new law on building barrier-free environment in 2023 and has been implementing various sectoral policies and strategies, such as the National Action Plan to boost the employment of persons with disabilities. Effective implementation of these laws, policies, require close collaboration, not only among government entities, but also among government, organizations of persons with disabilities, and other stakeholders, such as the business sector. What are CDPF's key strategies and actions to make the whole of government and the whole of society approach work for China's national commitment to disability inclusion? Over to you.
Thank you, dear Tai Tai. It's a great pleasure for me to attend this important panel. First of all, I'd like to express my grateful appreciation for ESCAP for your consistent efforts in promoting the 4 Asian Pacific decades and advancing disability inclusive development in our region. CDPF, my federation, feels proud to be a witness, a firm supporter, and active participant in this great initiative. And how time flies, we still share vivid memories of the first decade launched in Beijing in 1993. So I will share with CDPF's experience in implementing the Jakarta Declaration and advancing disability inclusive development through whole of government, whole of society approach for your reference. CDPF is a representative organization of 85 million persons with disabilities in China. In the meantime, we also perform some administrative functions entrusted by the government. By the government, so in China, as one of the outcomes of the UN Decades for Disabled Persons, a State Council Working Committee on Disability has been established, which is chaired by a state councillor and composed of now 38 government ministries and departments. This committee is responsible for coordinating disability-related guidelines, policies, programs, etc. at the central level. And the CDPF, my federation, serves as the office of this committee. This working mechanism has proved to be very important and effective tool for CDPF to mobilize the government, to incorporate disability affairs into the overall national, social, and economic development. Just now, Ms. Taita mentioned China's recently adopted law on accessibility. I will take it as an example. CDPF makes full advantage of our close connections with both the government and persons with disabilities and get ourselves deeply involved throughout the whole process of formulation and implementation of the law. As a disability representative organization, CDPF knows well the critical importance of accessibility in building a disability-inclusive society. Therefore, through years of research and data collection, we submitted a proposal to the national legislator to formulate a law on accessibility, and the proposal was taken. Then later, CDPF joins the law drafting committee together with 12 related government ministries and departments. And in this process, we also help to solicit opinions of 50,000 people with disabilities in China. And after the law is adopted, CDPF works closely with related functional departments to implement the law in various aspects of the society, for example, in the physical environment, in ICT, transportation, medical system, education system, workplace, etc. We present the needs and the data of people with disabilities in this process. After all, we are closer to people with disabilities and know them better. And in the meantime, CDPF also works closely with publicity authorities to launch a nationwide publicity campaign to enhance awareness of the public and people with disabilities. We publicize articles to interpret the law in prestigious media and magazines and on the websites of the government and the CDPF, and we compiled cases of best practices, held training courses, and listened to the feedback of people with disabilities. And also we talked to the private sector, the business and the research institutions, and take incentive measures, say the taxation rebate, low interest bank loans, to encourage and motivate the private sector to develop more high-tech accessible products. Most importantly, we also work with judicial authorities to conduct nationwide inspections to make sure that the law is properly implemented. So through this whole of government and whole of society approach, it proves that it's very effective. Noticeable progress has been made in just 1 year since the law on accessibility came into effect. That's my intervention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Xu, for sharing with us China's example in developing its national coordination mechanism on disability inclusion, especially through the example in developing the new law on accessibility, and how it brings this mechanism, help bring over 12 ministries and different segments of society to contribute to its development and adoption. Thank you. Now let me turn to Kun Sawalak, who is a member of CRPD. Kun Sawalak, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities recognizes participation as a core principle. To support the participation and inclusion of persons with disabilities in... My timer... Shuling actually didn't use up her time. Yeah, so to support the participation of persons with disabilities in community and all aspects of society, we need to ensure a whole of society approach in national implementation and monitoring mechanism for the convention. Can you shed light on the strategies to achieve this objective?
Mm-hmm. Before I will conclude my presentations by responding to your questions given to me. However, before starting the answer, I would like you to pay attention to the overall challenges that all state parties had been facing to implement the conventions. Because even though we are talking about the implementation of Jakarta declarations, and we accepted a lack of close consultations and active involvement of persons with disability and their active organizations are crucial and extremely critical in all regions, including Asia Pacific. So, by the lack of close consultation, the lack of measures to ensure a close consultation and active involvement of persons with disability and their representative organization, in particular, women and girls with disability, lead to the failure of the implementations to the convention and other international human rights treaty. Distinguished delegates, during my times being the committees, a constructive dialogue provides me a clear picture of the state party efforts. I really appreciate and enjoy reading the state party report. And I really enjoy that part, the progressive realizations of the implementations into the national legislation, laws, policy, and programs. However, there are still, many implementation gaps remain critical in many areas. Furthermore, by listening to the report and by listening to organizations of persons with disability and individual persons with disability also reminds me and other committee a clear scenario of the direct experiences of rights holders, especially women, children with disability, and older persons with disability in particular area. I really truly appreciate the contributions of organizations of persons with disability and individual with disability to this regard. I am going to provide you some example of the critical area. I acknowledge that women with disability are facing a violation to sexual and reproductive health and forced medical treatment, for example, involuntary sterilization, contraception, and abortions. In addition, a lack of comprehensive protections. Persons with disability, in particular women and children with intellectual and psychosocial with disability, often experience intersectional discriminations and restrictions of their autonomy. Some of them even been faced a forced institutionalization when their family can no longer provide care and support for them. Then a lack of measures taken in place to ensure procedural accommodations arrangement in justice systems. And this is proved by the absence of disaggregated data collections on the numbers of complaints submitted by persons with disability and received by the courts and the police and other relevant sectors. And also the inclusive education has gone too far behind the segregated schooling systems and home life institutions. How far we have come towards inclusive education is to be considered, and removing barriers that come from the systems, attitudes are identified in finding inclusive possibilities for their children, our students with disability. Furthermore, persons with disability were declared incompetent, are already deprivations of their basic human rights, including right to vote, work, marriage, as well as the possibility to make autonomous decisions. And furthermore, the lack of measures available in place to ensure accessibility, access to information, communication, ICT, when the state party design for public services and public policy, and it is now not only affecting everyday life, but latter was making it almost impossible for persons with disability to receive support during the emergency. I saw, the video clips about the emergency, and a lack of the preparedness and action from major humanitarian action is extremely crucial. There is no effort to reach out to organizations of persons with disability or family a member of person with disability to distribute emergency assistance, a meaningful participation to echo their needs in the humanitarian crisis are always often forgotten. So in my conclusion for the first round, monitoring mechanisms are often unaccompanied by indicators to measure their effectiveness to support government tracking progress, assess impacts, and identify areas where further improvement are needed. In fact, persons with disability were already facing many disenabling environments before any kinds of conflicts and emergency. However, the discrimination against them has already been amplified as a consultations. If persons with disability are being overlooked in the peaceful times, it is unlikely that anyone will take disability issue into account during a crisis. In addition, the monitoring mechanisms are ineffective to engage persons with disability, so that's why we find the results of many implementing gaps, and their representative organizations are always overlooked. The efforts to ensure a meaningful participation of persons with disability and their representative organizations, particularly women and children, are often, again, I reiterate, overlooked in every situation. Even in the state parties, the government with the gender equality and child protection frameworks are available. Disability perspectives are frequently excluded, while disability-specific policy fails to consider gender and age perspective, leading to a further segregation and marginalization. This reality impacts the achievement of the popular slogan, "No one is left behind." I will, make the other intervention for the second round about how the committee examine the state report and how CRPD links or complement to Jakarta declarations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kun Sawalak, for highlighting and passionately advocating the importance of making sure the participation of persons with diverse disabilities, including women with disabilities, and all the various contexts and the challenges. We look forward to hearing more from you on the strategies and good examples. Now, I'd like to turn to Mr. Lim, who is the chair of ASEAN Disability Forum. Mr. Lim, ASEAN has been at the forefront of advocating disability inclusion through political commitments, such as the Bali Declaration on the enhancement of the role of participation of persons with disabilities in ASEAN community, the ASEAN Decade of Persons with Disabilities, and the ASEAN Enabling Master Plan 2025. As a civil society leader, please share with us some key highlights of how collaboration with diverse actors has contributed to the implementation of ASEAN instruments that mainstream disability inclusion.
Thank you. I think the whole landscape for disability development inclusion has changed dramatically over the years. And I think we are at this fantastic threshold whereby we find that even as exemplified in the ASEAN Enabling Master Plan 2025, there is a change of mindset in the paradigm of thinking, because disability matters are no more looked upon as a social welfare issue, but as a rights-based, cross-sectoral issue. And I think that really helps in promulgating the disability sector into greater prominence and making sure, as Sawalak has so well articulated, that the rights of persons with disability should not be violated, and we should always respect the needs of and the rights of persons with disabilities in every aspect of our lives. The whole idea of disability inclusion was started perhaps as early as nearly 20 years ago when the CRPD was adopted. And I think that brought about a whole change for a global movement towards a rights-based disability approach towards issues that pertains to persons with disabilities and the challenges that they face in being set aside from mainstream living. And in ASEAN, I think we are not so far away from making sure that we follow the footsteps, because the ASEAN Disability Forum was set up as early as 2009 as a loose network of OPDs in the 10 ASEAN countries. And when we were officially registered as an entity, legal entity under Indonesian law in 2016-2017, we enjoyed the accredited status by ASEAN as an accredited ASEAN entity, and that opened up a great deal of opportunities for the ASEAN Disability Forum to be able to speak up and advocate on matters pertaining to disability in the ASEAN region. And as mentioned by Chacha just now, we advocated for disability inclusion under the Bali Declaration, and even under the Incheon strategy, the precursor to what we are talking about today on the Jakarta Declaration. We felt that there was a need for more CSOs to have their voice heard on the Incheon strategy. And we have three points that we felt was very important to us. Number one, we felt that there was a need for a monitoring and implementation details, because we felt that under the Incheon strategy, this was missing. And we need to really make sure that the outcome of disability inclusion can be measured and can be reported on in the 10 years that preluded the third decade of persons with disability. And under the Jakarta Declaration, the fourth decade was established from 2023 to 2032. And I felt that this is something that was very important, because we wanted to make sure that there is a monitoring and evaluation system for us to look into the outcomes and how well we have achieved those outcomes. Number two, we wanted a whole of government and a whole of society approach to make sure that it is a joint and synergistic approach towards disability matters that concern people with disability. And thirdly, we were adding on some of the more, what we call the silent disability groups, like people with mental health issues. And that really brought a great deal. And when we, with the help of ESCAP, we got together, ASEAN Disability Forum and the Pacific Disability Forum, got together all the CSOs in the Asia Pacific region. And that's quite a sizable amount of people with disabilities that we represent. We got together, look at some comments, some inputs that we have, and we knock it out into a draft statement that we can give to the high-level political meeting in Jakarta, and that eventually got incorporated into the Jakarta Declaration. But that is the whole of society approach. Let me talk about the whole of government approach, because ASEAN, as you all, many of you very well known, that we work under a very structured ASEAN infrastructure. So we have three sectorial bodies, right? The SOMSWAT, the ICHA, and also the ACWC. And ADF, because of our accredited status by ASEAN Secretariat, we were able to make sure that regionally we were engaged in conversations, in input, giving comments on matters that pertaining to disability matters, but not only at the regional level, but also nationally. The national SOMSWAT, the national ICHA, and the national ACWC also hold dialogue sessions with our local focal points in the 10 ASEAN countries, and they were also actively engaged in providing comments and inputs to whatever matters that were important at hand. So this is, to me, a wonderful illustration of how the whole of government and the whole of society approach towards disability matters come about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lim, for sharing with us how you worked with the civil society network, diverse actors in advancing the implementation of both sub-regional, as represented by ASEAN, instruments, as well as contributing to regional framework such as Jakarta Declaration, which helped enriching the context and also incorporating the voices from civil society. Now I have the pleasure to invite Mr. Waka Shahid. He's the Senior Program Manager with Transformational Communities International. Mr. Waka, given your experience in building a network of organizations of persons with psychosocial disabilities at a national and a regional level, what would be the effective strategy to enhance the multi-stakeholder engagement to influence the global discourse on the inclusion of a person with disabilities? How do you mobilize diverse actors for this cause? Over to you.
Thank you so much, and a warm good afternoon to everyone. My name is Vakar Puri. I am working with Transforming Communities for Inclusion as a Senior Programs Manager. TCI is a global and independent organization of persons with psychosocial disabilities, having its network members in more than 50 countries. I'm happy and delighted to be with you all today in this session to share about the work we do in TCI and how do we contribute to the implementation of the Jakarta Declaration. And first of all, I would like to start by expressing my deepest gratitude to all of us in this room for contributing to the implementation of the Jakarta Declaration under the light of UNCRPD. And I want to express my hearty thanks to ESCAP for inviting us and supporting us, supporting our voice of people with psychosocial disabilities in this CST meeting. So that we all can work together and how effectively we can contribute to the inclusive policy making and inclusive development. So first of all, to give a little bit of context, I want to emphasize that still we are very far and we are very behind to provide legal identities, fundamental human rights, and ensure community inclusion of people with psychosocial disabilities to live equally and independently and have adequate standard of lifestyles. As you all may know already that still today people with psychosocial disabilities are seen as non-persons. We are seen as people who have committed sins, are curse of God. We are tagged with different kind of labels and identities such as a mad person, people having a mental illness, mental patients, having an unsound mind. These kind of identities are listed in our legislations and legal frameworks. And based on these legal frameworks and identities, all persons with psychosocial disabilities continue to be discriminated. They are sent to the institutions. They remain uncounted population. They have no access to social, political, cultural, and economic opportunities. So in TCI, our approach has been to work at the national level and to empower the OPDs of persons with psychosocial disabilities so that they get the opportunity to dialogue with a variety of stakeholders, including civil society stakeholders, development agencies, governments, so that they can promote a gender-responsive life cycle approach to disability inclusion. And this can be done by strengthening community support systems and services for people with psychosocial disabilities at the grassroots communities. And our closest allies in all of our works have been the cross-disability stakeholders. And so there were two types of major issues we wanted to address. One was that in many countries we realized that there were no OPDs of persons with psychosocial disabilities existed. And even if they were existed, they had a very medical approach to disability inclusion. And on the other side, the second issue we had was we did not have very prominent space and visibility in the larger disability community. And we were left out of many global and regional and national policy making forums. So to counter this issue, we have been using our different program instruments. I would say those instruments are very small, but have done a big time work at the national level. So we have been using our fellowships, OPD grants, thematic community inclusion grants, holding multi-stakeholder workshops at national and regional levels, focusing on three major strategies, and which I think all of us in this room must adopt to promote multi-sectoral support for disability inclusion. Firstly, the leadership development of persons with psychosocial disabilities. At TCI, we have been facilitating in establishing an OPD of persons with psychosocial disability. And even if an OPD was existed, we have been working with them to make that paradigm shift from the medical model to the human rights model, so that they know about the human rights model, and they can work with various stakeholders. Second strategy have been working with the OPD leaders to prepare them for the rights-based advocacy at national level. And together, we really need to do a lot to build their capacity and facilitate to build their partnerships at the cross-disability leaders and different other leaders at the national level so that they can work in collaboration. So this kind of approach we have been taking so that all stakeholders at the national level can work together and contribute to the implementation and building a momentum at the national level. Thirdly, our core focus and key element has been to create a stakeholder engagement at national level and regional levels. And we take the opportunity to dialogue with them for inclusion in disability inclusive development. And we have been saying that not to see us from the medical perspective or mental health perspective, but to see us and involve us from the human rights-based perspective and from the CRPD-based perspective. And over the years, TCI has cultivated many opportunities for its member organizations and has facilitated as a bridge to bring all of those grassroots practices and inclusion practices and programs to promote CRPD and promote these in the global policies so that they can be reflected at the national level. And in the conclusion of my first question, I would just want to thank all of the cross-disability stakeholders. Sawalak was mentioning, Mr. Lim was mentioning about. So all of these supporters, ESCAP, other development stakeholders have been our close allies, and thank you for supporting our work. We have achieved a lot together, and there is a lot more to do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Waka, for sharing with us the particular challenges of facing persons with psychosocial difficulties and the effective strategies to support them, especially through multi-sectoral engagement and the importance of shifting from medical model to rights-based model. Thank you. So now I have the pleasure to invite our private sector representative, Megumi-san, who is the head of overseas business of Hariboni. Hariboni combines innovative business models with art to promote disability inclusion. Your company showcases the important role the private sector can play in supporting the economic empowerment of persons with disabilities, as well as tackling social bias and prejudice against them. Can you share with us the good practices and initiatives that your company has established? Thank you.
So I would like to, appreciate for this opportunities because, I'm the only one coming from the private sector, and it is very rare for us to come into this kind of official conference to really share what we do and yes. So thank you very much for having us. And so here I would like to present who we are and what kind of thing we do. So Hariboni is a Japanese startup. So we work with artists with cognitive disabilities, and we are the art licensing company, and together working with artists with cognitive disabilities. And with the part of the creativity and the art that's created by the artists with disabilities, we use their design to produce this kind of the fashion product or the interior designs, and we develop collaboration projects. So first of all, I would like to mention how we started this business. Hariboni was founded by the twin brothers on the side you see, and they have a 4-year older brother. His name is Shota. He lives with intellectual disabilities and autism. So when they were little, because of the disability the Shota had, he was pitied or sometimes made fun of and undermined. So the twins really wanted to change the negative perceptions around the disability. So this is how they actually started this business. And the name of company, Hiraobuni, is actually also coming from the brother Shota. He used to write this, Hiraruboni in Japanese katakana in his notebooks over and over. So, there must be a meaning behind that, even though he doesn't really speak about it. So that's why we actually adopted it as our company title. So here's our business model. It's pretty simple. It's a licensing business model. So in our network, we have more than 250 artists and have more than 3,000 artworks data. And with the art data, we develop a creative collaboration and propose to the enterprises or develop our own brand products. And we receive the license royalties or the creative production fees, and out of that we pay the license royalties back to the artists. So we are the bridge between the artists and enterprises or society, facilitating the creative collaboration and empowering the artists to contribute and earn as an artist. So we have two business domains. The first, the B2C. This is kind of like a brand store that we have back in Tokyo. And from here, I will introduce the licensing project with companies. And this is the art hotel, and art design credit cards, and more beautiful art design credit cards. And the Tokyo station with art decorations. And the business class, first class amenities for Japan Airlines. So if you fly with JAL, you get this like beautiful pouches, so you should. And here, art Nikon camera. And also the art designed pens with pilot, and art rally cars. And we actually invited one of the artists to actually declare the opening ceremony for this racing event. And these are some examples of the artists that we work together with. And as of now, up until last year, we only worked with the Japanese artists. But from this year, we actually hosted this International Art Award, which is called Hiraobuni Art Prize. And we received nearly 2,000 art pieces from 28 countries and regions all over the world. And now we're expanding our international artist network. And this is a photo from our award ceremony this year, August. And we invited the sponsoring company of Japanese enterprises. And we celebrated this beautiful creativity. And also we all agree upon to make this International Art Award to well known so that we can together bring, and create the utmost respect to the artists with disabilities. And with all the collaboration and also the power of creativity, this year we won this LVMH Innovation Award. LVMH is, as many people know, it's the big luxury brand company. And this was the first award winning from Japan. And together with the support from the company, we will be facilitating a lot of collaboration between the companies and the artists with disabilities. So here, I actually came with the artist, the artist who we usually work together with. And so I would like to introduce the artist sitting in the back, Asano-san, Kaoru-san. Yeah, so with the scarf, that's the CEO of our company. He's showing the scarf that's with the design of an artist, Haruka. And in the middle, he is the Kaoru Iga. So thank you. Thank you very much. So, with these proud artists, we are, delivering a lot of beautiful project to the society. And I would like to mention a little bit about our artists together with us as well. So Haruka Asano, she's an artist, and she's actually she's the person, the artist who actually won the Grand Prix of the first edition of the Hiraobuni Art Prize, and she is very fascinating artist because you see the artwork right next to her portrait. She actually draws on the back of rice bag. And she spends actually 7 months to finish this artwork, and as you can see, this like a strong, powerful the art and also the storytelling. She was with no doubt, she was the Grand Prix of the prize. Oops. Oh. I wanted to mention the Kaoru Iga. He was standing right in the middle of the people just standing over there. He is very. Oh, thank you very much. I went too fast. Yeah, here you go. So Kaoru Iga. So he's very unique in terms of the delicate use of the color. Oh, he's now standing in the back again. Thank you. Thank you very much. And he has a lot of energy, so he loves taking a walk or going to. He's holding the handkerchief, and you see the shirts that our CEO is wearing is also the art that's created by the Kaoru as well. So with all the artists and also the beautiful artwork, these kind of things that we are bringing here. And I would like to mention a little bit more details later, how we actually set the examples for other companies to together work with us. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Megumi-san, for sharing with us the fascinating arts. I think we are all inspired by the beautiful artwork of persons with disabilities. We will definitely want to hear more from you about the business model, what makes it successful and sustainable. So now we complete the first round of interventions with our panelists. We have about 20 minutes left. We'd like to now go into the second round of intervention with 4 minutes for each panelist. Now, for the second round, we will go a bit deeper into the strategies behind tackling particular challenges in different aspects you have outlined just now. May I begin with you again, Ms. Xu? With your experience of working with state actors at all levels of government, what challenges are there to step up actions to promote a whole of government approach? How do we better design a whole of government strategy to achieve national development goals for persons with disabilities and the Jakarta Declaration, while making sure that persons with disabilities and their representative organizations are effectively engaged in decision-making and actions in sectors? Over to you.
Thank you, Cai Cai. I agree with you that it's quite challenging to make sure that the voice of persons with disabilities could be heard in the decision-making. And I will also share with you some key measures China has taken to make this happen. Number one, nationwide we have over 6,000 people with disabilities and their representatives serving as deputies to the Congress or members of the political consultative conference at various levels. And this guarantees that their voice could be reflected at the top decision-making. And number two, at our disabled persons federations, its constitution requires that 20% of the staff should be people with disabilities to ensure fair representation. And number three, we mobilize all the stakeholders and involve all the stakeholders to make sure that persons with disabilities will ultimately benefit from the disability-related initiatives. I will show you an example by how we promote employment of persons with disabilities in China. Employment is an important indicator in CRPD, in SDG, as well as in Jakarta Declaration. So I will not take time to repeat how important it is for people with disabilities. In China, so the employment of people with disabilities has been remarkably improved over the years. But still, quite a number of challenges still remain. For example, the prejudice of the employers against the people with disabilities, the shortage of suitable and stable job vacancies, and the low competitiveness of people with disabilities due to low level of education, and also, of course, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic in the past years, etc. So therefore, the Chinese government launched a 3-year action for employment promotion of people with disabilities from 2022 to 2024. This action is a joint effort made by 23 government departments, such as finance, publicity, taxation, labor, social security, civil affairs, etc. And the action mainly focuses in 3 areas. Number 1, to increase job opportunities for people with disabilities. 4 categories of employees, namely the government, public entities, state-owned enterprises, and the influential private enterprises like the e-commerce business like Alibaba, Tencent. All of them are best sought after employees in China, I believe, in every country. So they are required to provide a batch of jobs exclusively for people with disabilities. And thanks to this measure, some of my colleagues at the Disabled People's Federations, they are very competent people with disabilities. They were headhunted and shifted to work in important government departments and the big companies. So this measure has an obvious, very exemplary effect on other potential employers. And number 2, to increase the competitiveness of people with disabilities by strengthening employment support for them. This measure targets 4 priority groups, namely people with disabilities in the rural areas, university graduates with disabilities, blind people, and other people with disabilities facing difficulties in finding a job. And number 3, we also made efforts to improve the vocational training and employment services for people with disabilities. So through the concerted efforts, by the end of 2023, just 2 years after the action was launched, another 1.1 million people with disabilities in the urban and rural areas get employed. Thus, the employment rate of working-age people with disabilities in China reaching to 55%. So with that, I conclude my intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Xu, for highlighting the experience in terms of tackling and employment of persons with disabilities, which is a challenge that all governments are grappling with. And the strategy lies behind this experience is to ensure close collaboration between government and big businesses and create opportunities for them. Thank you. Now, let's move to another speaker. Kun Sawalak. Yeah. Kun Sawalak, I'd like to ask you regarding your experience as a CRPD member and a strong advocate for disability inclusion. Can you tell us how can we facilitate the process of implementing and monitoring the convention? And share with us some successful initiatives from Asia-Pacific region.
Yeah, this would include how to engage persons with disability and multi-stakeholders, distinguished delegates. You know, CRPD identify multi-stakeholder engagement, especially organizations of persons with disability, under Article number 4. But however, I would like you to draw attention on the general comment number 7. The committee adopted the general comment number 7 to clarify the state party obligation under Article 4.3, require closely consultations and active involvement of persons with disability and their representative organization. And Article 33.3 on the participation of persons with disability in the monitoring process. In line with Article 28 on UDHRs and reaffirm the Article 25 of ICCPR and Article 5C of ICERD and Article 7 of CEDAW and Article 11 and 31 of CRC, along with the motto, nothing about us without us. The normative contents of the Article 4.3 and 33.3 explain what is to be considered as a consultation. And involvement and participation of OPD and individual with disability are priority, not choices, according to ICCPR, and how to involve persons with disability and their representative organization in designing, implementing, and monitoring of the convention. It is clearly identified under general comment under number 7. And CRPD approach is to close the implementation gap of other international human rights treaties, embedding the concept of equality and non-discrimination as a turning point to eliminate all forms of intersectional discriminations and respect to human diversity. Distinguished delegates. Specific global frameworks like SDGs, regional strategy, for example, Incheon strategy, make the idea for persons with disability in Asia Pacific, Bali Declarations, ASEAN's Enabling Master Plan on Disability, and Jakarta Declarations were built upon the convention concept and another international human rights treaties. However, only CRPD and international human rights treaties are legally binding. There is a unique monitoring system with an expert committee in charge of this work to examine the implementations of the state party and recognize the human rights indicator as their guidance. So therefore, the outcomes of the implementations complements SDG, Incheon strategy, Bali Declarations, ASEAN's Master Plan, Jakarta Declarations. I would like you to draw attention to the human rights indicator. The first one is the structural indicator, which is measure the adoptions of the policy for the implementations of human rights. For instance, legislations enacted that ensure disability inclusive DRRs policy, disaster risk reduction, including in the public and private setting across the level. The second is the process indicator, asset policy, and measure taken to implement those commitments on the ground. For instance, the indicator might be the proportions of the evacuations with access to all persons with disability, or the adapted infrastructure budget allocation to ensure disability inclusive policy in mainstreaming climate change plans in all settings, comparing with budget allocated to segregated and separated settings. And the last one, the outcome, that we have always heard about the outcome indicator that capture the result that reflect the level of enjoyment of on the lives of persons with disability in a given context. For instance, desegregated data by sex, age, disability, minority, indigenous or any background related to evacuation and DRR policies. Please allow me for a couple, just only maybe a couple minutes, 2 minutes, maybe 1 minute, to example of good practices that I think state party needs to know that you have made a lot of progress. For instance, the national human rights institutions involved in many countries, collaborate with multi-stakeholder and organizations of persons with disability, like in Thailand. The National Human Rights examine the Disability Empowerment Act and recommend the government to review the law and add specific measures to ensure gender, age, and other social identity aligned with the convention. Now we are under the process of negotiation. The impact would be, complement to CRC and CEDAW and other international human rights treaty. In Philippines, the inclusive education policy, the Department of Education, the National Council of Disability Affairs, OPD, and private sector adopted the alternative learning system. So the impact is more children with disability, especially from marginalized community, have gained access to education with a particular focus on reaching to girls and persons with disability in rural population. Or in Australia, they have a national disability strategy and access initiative with the government and OPD and private sector and local council working together. This made a great impact, to significant improvement of person with disability, mobility in that country, and etc. In Samoa and UNPRP in Bangladesh about access to justice, and on India and about law reform, on
Yes.
sexual and reproductive health, etc. You have a lot of,
Thank you very
good
much,
practices.
Kunsawalak.
Thank you.
Yeah. So while you outlined a lot of challenges, we are also very happy, and it's indeed encouraging to hear all these latest successful examples. So thank you. It brings good news to the discussion. Now let me turn to Mr. Lim again. Who has been a very strong disability advocate in ASEAN. We'd like to have you to share with us your insight on the challenge and opportunities you see in strengthening partnerships and cooperation in accelerating the ASEAN Enabling Master Plan 2025, as well as the Jakarta Declaration. Over to you, Mr.
Thank you. I think as I mentioned earlier, the ASEAN Enabling Master Plan has a very clear outline, a blueprint of how disability development inclusion can be achieved in ASEAN, because the whole title or the whole thrust of this master plan is mainstreaming the rights of persons with disabilities in the ASEAN community by 2025. And I think there's 76 action points. We are now working very closely, I think, with the kind assistance of Agenda and IFAS. The whole ASEAN mechanism is now has looked into the midterm review of how well the various ASEAN member states have implemented the 76 action points, and the final reports have been finalized and will be tabled for discussion at the next SOMSON meeting in December. And hopefully that report can be adopted, and then we'll push it forward to the next step of being adopted at the next ASEAN summit. And that, I think, will give you an idea, a good report card on what are the opportunities that are available for ASEAN Disability Forum to be able to collaborate with sectoral bodies, with other stakeholders, to see how we can really go forward to make the right rail for many of the organizations and for people with disabilities in the ASEAN region. But I must alert you to the fact that not everybody not everything is equal in ASEAN. Each country has its own national priorities, has its own area of interest that they want to champion. And I must say that there's no one-size-fits-all solution that's going to fit all the uniqueness of the 10 ASEAN countries. But we hope that we can achieve the intended outcome of mainstreaming the rights of persons with disabilities in ASEAN. So there's an opportunity for us down the road. And as we work towards, or as we inch towards the end of 2025, the logical question is, what's next, right? Because either we close this chapter and start a new one because we are looking into the next ASEAN vision in 2045, or do we extend it a little bit more to see how the end of the master plan can be looked at? But that's beyond our input, so we can only give our feeling and our sense and allow the decision makers to work with what is the next step. Secondly, I feel that there is a lot of opportunity for us to go beyond disability matters, because the ASEAN sectoral bodies has been engaging the ASEAN Disability Forum in other issues like climate change, environmental rights, gender equality, disability and social integration matters, and even things like, for example, how to have online protection of children, as well as violence against women, human trafficking. So we have a whole range of areas that's coming up. And that brings me to the next point, because while there are opportunities, there are also challenges. And that means that we must, within the whole ASEAN Disability Forum Network, we must have that capability and the capacity to handle all these subjects. Because I will be the first to admit that not all of us are masters in every subject that is presented to us. We need to do our own fair share of study, research, and formulate our thinking on how these issues should roll out. And this is where I think, while a lot of our member organizations in the ASEAN Disability Forum glamour and are given opportunities to comment, to give their inputs, to give their insights on disability matters, they also lack the expertise, so to speak, to be able to speak with some authority on what's going on. So that is the challenges that we face. But one thing good is that we are not working alone. We have a lot of partners, stakeholders like ESCAP. We have opportunity to work with Agenda and IFAS, DPI, Korea, APCD, the International Disability Alliance. All these are helpful partners that we work with so that we can bring a more synergistic approach towards handling matters that concern us as persons with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lim, for highlighting the strategies in terms of strengthening partnerships and also regional cooperation in the context of emerging challenges, including climate change, as well as reaping the opportunities presented by digital transformation. Thank you. Now let's move to Mr. Waka. Mr. Waka, with the remaining years of implementing the disability decade, could you share with us your view? What would be a priority in terms of employing a whole of society approach underlined by multi-sectoral support and collaboration? And what particular role can civil society play in that regard? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chaja. This is a very important question. So followed by what I was mentioning of collaborations and working in a multi-sectoral approach, and under the light of Asia-Pacific Decade, in TCI we plan to continue our advocacy on identity of persons with psychosocial disabilities, and we have been using this to steer conversations around redefining the entry point. And because it has been a starting point for us, until we are known as persons with disabilities, stakeholders will continue to confine us to the mental health box. So in TCI, we say, for example, imagine there are two types of door. There is one small door, which is a mental health door, where there is only medical approach to psychosocial disability, which leads to asylums, mental hospitals, medication, psychiatrists, identity of being a patient, having no access to education, no social protection, no employment, legal capacity, etc. And so we don't need that kind of door. And then we see in a broader perspective that, okay, there is another door, which is a CRPD door, where we have, where we see that people with psychosocial disabilities have access to fundamental human rights. They have access to different kinds of opportunities. They have access to education, social protection, employment, housing, supported decision making. A place where a promotion of living inside the communities, deinstitutionalizing people. So which door we wanted to choose? Definitely we'll choose the CRPD door. So in the light of Jakarta Declaration, TCI will sustain to promote a gender responsive life cycle approach to disability inclusion, and we plan to conduct different kind of studies, which we are in the process already, developing different community inclusion tools, supporting initiatives at grassroots communities on community inclusion, making the existing grassroots community inclusion programs more CRPD compliant, and our core focus will remain on community inclusion of people with psychosocial disabilities, which means that communities must be empowered and prepared to enable support for each other, especially for people who are most marginalized and excluded members of the community. So we say that community support systems are a viable social entity that needs to be recognized in our Asia-Pacific countries. For example, there is a normative that if all assistive devices, interpretation services, employment, housing, social protection, personal assistance services, all these services are there, then inclusion will happen. Yes, it will happen, but we also need to see that there are other additional elements that may need people with, that will support people with psychosocial disabilities to access all of these services which are available out there. So what we have learned from our grassroots communities that there is a need to highlight and emphasize on community support systems by actively engaging communities, engaging family members, building stronger community networks, building and strengthening peer support networks, establishing more and more informal support systems inside the communities. This will definitely support in preventing institutionalization and also support people with psychosocial disabilities to live within the mainstream communities. And most importantly, as Konsawalak was mentioning about forced institutionalization, involuntary hospitalization, forced sterilization of women and girls with psychosocial disabilities inside the institutions. So deinstitutionalization will remain one of our core areas because institutions in any form or shape can never be a place for care or residence because coercion is not care. So in TCI, we intensively engaged with the development of the deinstitutionalization guidelines with the CRPD committee members, which serves as a new reference point for the CRPD jurisprudence around Article 19 of the CRPD. And we are part of the global coalition. We are now working with Korean Disability Forum to initiate a DI coalition at the Asia level. So we'll focus on DI, and we will focus with members by supporting them to document all of these alternative deinstitutionalization practices, supporting programs at the grassroots communities, and which can support preventing institutionalization and prepare individuals to live within the communities. Because if we will have these kind of documentation, okay, practices are done, and now it's the time we need to make sure that these practices are documented. So we are working a lot with our members in last 2 years so that these practices could be documented and can be replicated in different parts of the world and other countries of the Asia Pacific. So in TCI, in the last, I would say that we have been working relentlessly to change the status quo, and we keep building bridges and solidarity with all kinds of stakeholders with sole aim of true and meaningful participation and inclusion of persons with psychosocial disabilities. And in TCI, we have always believed in the power of a movement together, because we want to be part of the larger disability movement, and the power of movement is different. And moving together with all kinds of peers and not working in silos. Hence, we plan to keep fostering partnerships, and we look forward to working with all of you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Waka, for sharing with us your insights and recommendations how to support civil society engagement so that we can benefit from the vast resources that civil society can offer, including the community-based support system. Thank you. Finally, let's also hear from Mikumi-san, the private sector perspective, especially in establishing disability-inclusive business. Your insight and the lessons learned from the model you have built, how to make it viable, how to make it sustainable. Over to you.
Thank you. So I would like to share some concrete examples that, from our past projects. So first, in the beginning, it wasn't successful all the time. In the beginning, it was a very there were a difficult time for us to really have the project with other corporations, etc. And so in the beginning, so there was a time we actually were told that other corporation would collaborate with us if it's for free or something. And so we thought it's because that they don't have any examples before to imagine how they can actually work with artists with disability. So we changed our mind, and we actually decided to set an example for those people. So we started to, build our own business, own brand store and the products, and showcase like how beautifully like all the arts that's created by the artists with disability can be deployed in the business sector, and that actually was a quite success. And I'll introduce the two different examples. The first one would be the hotel collaboration that we did previously. We not only, the collaboration we did wasn't just like decorating the beautiful rooms with beautiful art. It was more like bringing bringing the people with disability into the business. And actually, the hotel got a phone call after the collaboration, and from a person on a wheelchair, can I be a guest for the hotel? So it was their first time to get in this kind of a phone call, and it was their first time to really rethink and what they can do for bringing inclusiveness and diversity into their business. And yes, so the second example would be the department stores. As I said earlier, we also have a B2C the business, which is our brand, and also the brand stores. And whenever we go, whenever we hosted a pop-up in the department stores, we welcome a lot of people with disabilities and their families. And for a lot of peoples and the families with the people with disabilities, it is very difficult for them to come to the luxury department stores because they feel very uncomfortable, and they might think like they could be a burden to other public. But because of the Hiraobuni is being there, they feel more comfortable, and also this safety to be a part of this the event. So it actually brings a lot of diversity to the audience, and for those enterprises and also the companies who work with us actually realize, oh, this is how we can actually bring people with disability into their business, and this is kind of things that we can actually learn from them. So it's not just bringing people. It's not something we're actually paying the artist the license fee back to the artist, but also learning the insights and how we can bring the inclusiveness and diversity into the business. And I want to also highlight the importance of the relationship that we have with artists with disabilities, because you might wonder if the copyright stay with the artist. Yes, it does actually. We don't purchase the copyrights from the artist. It always stays with the artist with disability, and we treat them as a business partner. So we always, in any project, we always have this important process of getting the permission from the artist. Is it okay to use the art in this way? Is it okay to use the art in this kind of project? Do you agree? And after getting the permission from the artist and the family and the welfare facilities, then finally we can actually launch our project. So, inviting them in the decision-making process and also making sure they are okay with what we're doing, it is very important. So through this kind of collaboration, it opens many doors for artists with disability and be able to be a part of business activities. And this way we actually invite a lot of different enterprises and outside of not only us, but other companies to be a part of this change. And yes. So about not only just doing this by ourselves, but we really also appreciate the support in terms of bringing visibility to us from the Japanese government, and also the welfare facilities that we together work with, because without their the visibility and the promotion and also the understanding, we were nobody to people with disabilities. So we've been discussing about a whole society to be a partner and promote the diversity inclusion in society. The private sector can definitely play a different role compared to the public sector and also the organizations. But this way, this could be an example how we can actually promote the diversity inclusion as a society. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Megumi-san. It's really important for the private sector to come in to support persons with disabilities in their employment, not only use their talents and have their contribution to our society, but also we can make the business viable and sustainable. So it's a win-win scenario. We hope more business will emerge, disability inclusive business model works, and we look forward to hear more examples and case studies from our participants later on as well. So with that, I'd like to wrap up our panel discussion. Our speakers have shared from the perspectives of government, civil society, and the private sector, and how we can work together to adopt a whole of government and whole of society approach. This is critical for the new disability decade. I want to just mention that we have a few copies outside on the operational guide, which could provide more information, tips, suggestions along the line of the 6 priorities outlined in Jakarta Declaration, if you are interested. So thank you very much for the wonderful participation in this discussion. I'll now hand it over to our chair for the agenda item.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Chai Chai and distinguished panelists for an invigorating panel discussions and for sharing your insight on accelerating the implementation of the Jakarta Declaration on the Asian and Pacific Decade of the Person with Disability 2023 to 2032. I now would like to open the floor for a statement. I will first open the floor to a statement from members, associate members, observer countries. I will then invite a statement from the intergovernmental, international organizations, non-governmental organizations, and other entity. I invite the first speaker on the afternoon list, the distinguished delegate of Bangladesh, to please take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Chair, distinguished delegates, Bangladesh remains steadfast in its commitment to ensuring the rights and inclusion of persons with disabilities in line with Jakarta Declaration on the Asia and Pacific Decade of Persons with Disabilities 2023 to 2032. It is our belief that that inclusive development is essential for achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and fostering a society that benefits all its citizens. Over the years, Bangladesh has taken significant steps to implement comprehensive programs aimed at improving the lives of persons with disabilities. Firstly, Disability Protection Program. The Disability Protection Program serves over 2.5 million persons with disabilities, providing financial support, access to healthcare, and assistive devices such as wheelchairs and hearing aids. This program is a part of our broader commitment to ensure that people with disabilities are empowered and can participate fully in society. Secondly, inclusive education initiatives. The government has expanded efforts to ensure children with disabilities have access to quality education alongside their peers. Integrated education programs have been implemented in the government primary schools to ensure inclusivity. More than 67,000 schools are now equipped with ramps and special facilities to accommodate children with physical disabilities. Additionally, vocational training centers have been set up to provide skills training for students with disabilities, ensuring that they have greater employment opportunities in the future. Thirdly, employment and skill development. Employment opportunities are a cornerstone of inclusion for persons with disabilities. The skill development program for persons with disabilities has trained over 100,000 individuals in diverse fields, enhancing their employability and supporting their transition into the workforce. Fourthly, accessibility and digital inclusion. The National E-Service Accessibility Standard has been adopted to ensure that all government services are accessible to the person with disabilities. Moreover, telemedicine services have been expanded, allowing individuals with disabilities to access healthcare from home. To further accelerate the implementation of Jakarta Declaration, we recommend the following measures. Adopting inclusive policy frameworks, government must ensure that disability considerations are mainstreamed across all policy areas, including education, health, and employment. Bangladesh's National Action Plan for Persons with Disabilities aims to make public services fully accessible and inclusive, focusing on removing barriers that prevent persons with disabilities from participating fully in the society. Secondly, capacity building and empowerment. Empowerment through capacity building is essential for the inclusion of persons with disabilities. Bangladesh has launched various capacity building initiatives, including vocational and technical training programs, specifically designed for individuals and with disabilities. In the last fiscal year, over 15,000 individuals received training, and many have successfully transitioned into formal employment. Finally, strengthening regional cooperation. We urge member states to enhance cooperation in implementing the Jakarta Declaration. By sharing best practices and lessons learned, we can collectively develop and implement effective policies and programs for persons with disabilities. Bangladesh stands ready to share its experience in areas such as community-based rehabilitation and inclusive education. Bangladesh reaffirms its unwavering commitment to ensuring the full inclusion of persons with disabilities in every aspect of social and economic life, in pursuance of our obligation under the UN Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Together, let us strive to make the Asia-Pacific region a beacon of inclusivity where persons with disabilities can lead fulfilling lives free from barriers and discrimination. I thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Bangladesh. I remind all delegations to limit their statement to 3 minutes. Now, next speaker on my list is the distinguished delegate of Republic of Korea, whom I now invite to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Distinguished delegate, since ratifying the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the Republic of Korea has continuously refined its legislation and systems. To realize the vision of the Jakarta Declaration, we are implementing policies focused on 6 priority areas. Firstly, ROK is harmonizing national legislation with the CLPD. Since ratifying the optional protocol in December 2022, the Korean government has established a research and implementation system to enhance effectiveness and integrate CLPD principles into domestic laws. Following the consideration of our combined second and third periodic report and the adoption of concluding observations by the UN Committee, we identified implementation tasks in 2023. Now we are developing annual plans. Secondly, ROK promotes the political participation of men and women with disabilities from diverse age groups. To guarantee their political rights, we have made it easier for people with disabilities to participate in elections. We are strengthening cooperation and communication with various disability groups to ensure their voices are heard in political decision-making. Thirdly, ROK is improving physical and digital accessibility to meet the diverse needs of people with disabilities. With the Act on the Guarantee of Convenience Promotion for Persons with Disabilities, Senior Citizens, Pregnant Women, and Nursing Mothers, we mandate the installation of ramps, elevators, and designated parking in public buildings, as well as boarding zones for wheelchair users, audio guides, and visual signal devices in public transportation. We are also ensuring that all digital services like website, mobile apps, and electronic devices are designed to be disability-friendly. Fourth, the Korean government is strengthening global partnerships between public and private sectors in line with our third comprehensive strategies for international development cooperation. We aim to enhance our disability-related capabilities globally by collaborating with the ESCAP to promote disability-inclusive development and conducting ODA projects with private organizations abroad. Fifth, we are promoting a gender-sensitive life cycle approach to disability. Our third comprehensive plan for gender equality policy, 2023 to 2027, is ensuring their right to pregnancy and childbirth by increasing the number of disability-friendly OBGYNs and improving care services for seniors, people with disabilities, and seriously ill patients. Lastly, we are reinforcing monitoring capacity. The government conducts regular surveys to gather data on the social, economic, and educational situations of people with disabilities, including detailed information by type of disability, gender, age, and region. Distinguished delegate, ROK is committed to creating a society where all people with disabilities can participate equally, free from discrimination, by implementing these 6 priority areas to achieve the goals of the Jakarta Declaration. The Korean government will continue to strengthen its efforts toward a disability-inclusive society. I thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegates of the Republic of Korea. The next speaker on my list is the distinguished delegate of Russian Federation, whom now invite to take the floor.
Уважаемый господин председатель, улучшение качества жизни людей с ограниченными возможностями, создание и обеспечение им равных возможностей для жизни в обществе является приоритетным направлением российской государственной социальной политики. В России фундаментальным документом в этой сфере стало распоряжение правительства, утвердившее концепцию развития в Российской Федерации системы комплексной реабилитации и абилитации инвалидов, в том числе детей-инвалидов, на период до 2025 года. Целью данной концепции является обеспечение доступности для инвалидов качественных, эффективных, безопасных и научно обоснованных реабилитационных, абилитационных услуг и технических средств реабилитации в сочетании с реализацией исчерпывающих мер, направленных на социальную адаптацию и интеграцию инвалидов во все сферы жизни общества для достижения ими максимально возможной независимости и повышения качества жизни, с учетом современного международного понимания инвалидности как совокупности барьеров, затрудняющих обычную жизнь человека при наличии у него стойких нарушений здоровья и функций организма. Одной из ключевых задач концепции, нашедшей свое отражение в плане ее реализации, является совершенствование правового регулирования системы комплексной реабилитации инвалидов. Главная цель этой работы – обеспечение равного доступа к качественным услугам по всем основным направлениям реабилитации и преемственности при их оказании. Также буквально месяц назад распоряжением правительства утверждена концепция по повышению уровня занятости инвалидов Российской Федерации на период до 2030 года и план мероприятий по ее реализации. В концепции представлен анализ современного состояния и проблем обеспечения занятости инвалидов в Российской Федерации, международной практики содействия занятости инвалидов, информация о резервах повышения уровня занятости инвалидов. Положения данной концепции основаны на результатах специализированных научных исследований и направлены как на преодоление внешних факторов, влияющих на доступность и качество трудоустройства и занятости инвалидов, так и на необходимое сопровождение и адресную помощь людям с инвалидностью, с учетом их индивидуального запроса и ресурса. Кроме того, знаковым событием в конце прошлого года стало подписание президентом Российской Федерации федерального закона, благодаря которому законодательство в области реабилитации и абилитации инвалидов приобрело комплексный межведомственный характер. Впервые на единой системной основе урегулированы вопросы медицинской реабилитации и санаторно-курортного лечения инвалидов, оказания им протезно-ортопедической помощи, профессиональной и социальной реабилитации, реабилитации и абилитации методами культуры и адаптивного спорта, обеспечение инвалидов техническими средствами реабилитации. Основные положения данного федерального закона вступают в силу с 1 марта следующего года. Уважаемый господин председатель, мы понимаем многоплановость и масштаб вызовов, требующих решения, и рассматриваем предпринятые меры как этап большой работы. Это прежде всего относится к дальнейшему совершенствованию законодательства в соответствии с отдельными положениями ратифицированной Конвенции о правах инвалидов, к формированию правоприменительной практики. Положения Джакартской декларации для нас являются полезным инструментом для решения этих вопросов. И мы просим комитет также уделять особое внимание вопросам изменения социальных стереотипов в отношении людей с инвалидностью. Благодарю вас за внимание.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Russian Federation. The next speaker on my list is the distinguished delegate of Indonesia, whom I now invite to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair, Excellencies, and distinguished delegates. Following the ESCAP meeting in Jakarta in October 2022, we continue to feel the collective spirit of the Asia-Pacific region in ensuring the respect, protection, and fulfillment of the basic rights of persons with disabilities, as embodied in Jakarta Declaration. By 2023, 21 provinces have formulated and ratified regulations relating to Indonesia's disability inclusive development master plan. There has been a significant increase in awareness among ministries, institutions, and regional government regarding inclusive policy formulation involving in organization of persons with disabilities and development partner. The government administers the Social Rehabilitation Assistance Program, providing a broad range of direct and indirect services. We also implement a national feeding program and support persons with disabilities in entrepreneurship. Additionally, they benefit from programs such as the Family Hope Program and targeted cash transfer for food and orphans. We also develop innovative assistive devices equipped with alarm to provide protection against danger and crime. We attend to remote areas, reinforcing the principle that no one is left behind. Ministries collaborate to support. We encourage the establishment of disability service unit of manpower, providing disability sensitivity training for companies and award those that employ persons with disabilities. We also develop a roadmap for the prevention and treatment of vision disabilities. In the recent public election, the government committed to increase the participation of persons with disabilities. These are examples of how Indonesia has mainstreamed disability issue into its planning, implementation, and development processes. To ensure continuity, we have released the law on the National Long-Term Development Plan, which includes provision for promoting the rights of persons with disabilities. Indonesia is also drafting a government regulation of concession. To enhance regional cooperation and promote the rights of persons with disabilities, Indonesia hosted the ASEAN High-Level Dialogue on Disability Inclusive Development and Partnership Beyond 2025, held in Makassar in October 2023. Although Indonesia continues to reaffirm in commitment to the Jakarta Declaration, challenges remain. We have integrated data on persons with disabilities into the National Data of Social Welfare, which facilitate links with social protection program. Further efforts are needed to establish a national disaggregated data set. Our geographical condition force specific challenges in providing access to rehabilitation services. Rehabilitation financing also requires more effective and efficient strategies. To encourage stronger action, we recommend to focus on adaptive social protection strategies and facilitate independency. We also need to target families and communities of social support systems. Cooperation with other countries, NGOs, and development partners will be necessary to support us achieving our goal. We are proposing the ASEAN-Japan Initiative on Developmental Disorder Project to enhance awareness and support system for persons with developmental disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Indonesia. Now the next speaker on my list is the distinguished delegate of Japan, whom I now invite to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. As we all of us are aware that this decade is crucial, it is because it overlaps with the goal period of the SDGs. ESCAP's operational guide on the implementation of Jakarta Declaration as a living document shows practical and concrete actions to realize its goal. In addition to that, as stated in the key documents of the decade, Incheon strategy, which strategy is still alive in the Jakarta Declaration, Asia Pacific Development Center on Disability, in short, APCD, is a regional open resource, and it has been playing its role to promote and implement decades in collaborative manner. It was established by the effort of government of Thailand and Japan in 2002, and it became independent body. Since then, the various government agencies, civil society organizations, organizations of persons with disabilities of China, Korea, Thailand, and other countries in this region have been developing cooperation with APCD. Such cooperation with APCD can enhance more to accelerate disability inclusive development in our region to realize both goals of the decades and SDGs. For instance, APCD has introduced several new online learning courses which covers various important themes on disability and development. And anyone in our region from east to west can participate and learn in accessible and inclusive manner. APCD also provides online interactive platform which everyone can share our knowledge and resources. So we can connect each other by collaborating with APCD. Thank you very much.
Thank you, distinguished delegates of Japan. Now, next speaker is the distinguished delegate of China, whom now invite to take the floor.
尊敬的主席，中国有8500万残疾人，中国政府以人民为中心，采取措施，切实履行雅加达宣言等亚太残疾人10年相关文件，促进残疾融合发展，确保残疾人事务融入国家总体发展规划，成为经济社会文化发展的有机组成部分，努力不让一个残疾人掉队。我们建立困难残疾人生活补贴、重度残疾人护理补贴等专项保障制度，惠及2700多万残疾人。截至2020年底，710万农村贫困残疾人摆脱绝对贫困。目前正努力拓展渠道，推动经济富农，促进他们的可持续就业，确保不返贫。正在实施促进残疾人就业3年行动方案和修订残疾人就业条例， 开展促进残疾妇女就业的美丽工坊项目中，让残疾人有尊严的生活，推动教育模式转型，大力发展融合教育，让残疾学生和小伙伴们一起学习，为残疾学生参加普通高考提供合理便利。近年来，每年都有3万多名残疾学生被普通高等院校录取。我们重视科技研发和应用，通过数字技术、人工智能等减少残疾融合的障碍，积极开展竞技体育和群众体育，促进残疾人康复健身、丰富生活。在去年的杭州亚残运会和今年的巴黎残奥运会上，中国代表团均取得良好成绩，高度注重残疾人和残疾人组织代表性。现在，全国各级人大代表和政协委员中，有6000多名残疾人、残疾人亲友和残疾人工作者，他们在政治生活中表达意愿，参与决策。去年9月颁布的无障碍环境建设法离不开他们的积极贡献。我们愿与亚太地区各成员加强交流合作，推动落实雅加达宣言，共同为残疾人美好幸福生活而努力。谢谢。
Thank you, distinguished delegate of China. The next speaker on my list is the distinguished delegate of Philippines, whom I now invite to take the floor.
Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. The Philippines reaffirms its commitment to upholding the rights and ensuring the inclusion of persons with disabilities as enshrined in our laws and policies. We have adopted the Magna Carta for persons with disabilities, which guarantees a 1% allocation of the total annual budget allotment for disability inclusion programs, as well as reserves 1% of positions in government agencies, offices, or corporations for persons with disabilities. Through the National Council on Disability Affairs, as well as our Persons with Disabilities Affairs offices at the provincial, city, and municipal levels, we are implementing the Strategic Plan 2024-2028, which aims to promote full participation and equal opportunities to enable persons with disabilities to live full and meaningful lives in a barrier-free, rights-based, and inclusive Philippine society. It focuses on thematic outcomes such as accessibility, employment, social protection, health, digital information, gender empowerment, education, participation, disaster risk reduction, and justice. We have also put in place policies and programs on health and education, such as the Universal Healthcare Act, the Alternative Learning System, and the Special Needs in Education Program. Auxiliary services provided by the Department of Social Welfare and Development include capacity building, provision of assistive devices, social assistance through the Cash for Work program, assistance to individuals in crisis situations, and sustainable livelihood program. Recognizing that achieving our goals requires a whole-of-society approach, the Philippines advocates for strong collaboration among the government, private sector, and civil society, while ensuring that persons with disabilities have the agency to make decisions affecting their lives. Despite all these efforts, we acknowledge that there is still a lot to be done. Studies show a strong link between poverty, disability, and gender inequality, where each exacerbates the other. Therefore, a gender-responsive life cycle approach from early childhood detection, prevention, and intervention must always be considered. Data-driven policy design and implementation are also crucial. Formulating evidence-based plans and programs grounded on accurate and reliable data is fundamental. Finally, we must uphold the rights of persons with disabilities, correct misperceptions, and eliminate stigma and discrimination. Thank you very much.
Thank you, distinguished delegates of Philippines. The next speaker on my list is the now distinguished delegate of United Kingdom of Britain and Northern Ireland, whom I now invite to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to extend my gratitude to you and ESCAP, fellow partners, and all participants joining us today. I would also like to express our appreciation at being nominated to participate in the working group on the Asian Pacific Decade of Persons with Disabilities. We acknowledge the progress made to date. However, we note with concern that despite the progress made, persons with disabilities, particularly those in vulnerable situations, continue to face discrimination in all dimensions of life, as well as physical, informational, and attitudinal barriers, and that people with disabilities are disproportionately affected by widening inequalities exacerbated by climate change and other crises. As discussed by fellow participants, we recognise that the Asia-Pacific region is experiencing rapid population ageing, which could increase the number of older persons living with disabilities. The UK recognises the significance of this agenda and aims to help people with disabilities achieve their full rights and freedoms on an equal basis through a twin-track approach, with targeted support through disability-specific interventions in key sectors alongside mainstream disability inclusion. We encourage you and ESCAP to continue promoting the effective implementation of the Beijing Declaration, Incheon Strategy and Jakarta Declaration, including the action plan to accelerate the implementation of the Incheon Strategy. We underscore the need to make strategic investments for the implementation and commit ourselves to taking measures towards disability-inclusive development through a whole-of-society approach in collaboration with all relevant stakeholders. The UK has shown global leadership on the international disability inclusion agenda and is committed to sustaining its effort and focus. We co-hosted the first Global Disability Summit, GDS, in London in 2018, which generated new momentum towards global disability rights with over 1,000 new global commitments. The FCDO continues to provide funding and support to the GDS Secretariat. In 2015, we co-founded the Global Action for Disability, GLAD network, with the International Disability Alliance, IDA, a network of donors and foundations which coordinates efforts towards disability-inclusive international development and towards humanitarian action. We chaired GLAD for 3 years and continue to play a role within the network, sitting on the Strategic Planning Working Group. The £46 million Disability Inclusive Development DID programme has been extended to 2026, focusing on the generation and dissemination of evidence on what works to support disability-inclusive development. At the end of March 2023, DID had reached over 16.7 million people, including 3 million people with disabilities, with public health messaging and interventions addressing education, health, livelihoods, and tackling stigma and discrimination. In the 3 years up to March 2023, we have provided £5 million worth of grants, technical assistance and advocacy support to the grassroots disability movement through the Disability Capacity Building Programme. Advocacy by grantees has resulted in 39 national level and 106 local policy changes, which secured or improved the rights of people with disabilities across 15 countries. DCBP funds programs globally, including in the Indo-Pacific region through the Disability Rights Fund and with other partners. Disability is a core consideration of the Gender Equality, Disability and Social Inclusion Framework for the UK Partnering for Accelerated Climate Transition UK PAT programme, which supports countries with high mitigation potential to increase their climate ambitions. The UK PAT programme partners have been embedding disability inclusion into their programmes and have worked with people with disability at community levels. For example, in Indonesia, testing ways to ensure people with disabilities are included in newly designed sustainable transport systems in Jakarta through accessible workshops and through other projects on transport which work meaningfully with people with disabilities to ensure transport is accessible. We believe that regional, sub-regional and national level cooperation, along with strategic implementation plans, can be the key for promoting sustainable disability equality enhancing solutions. The UK is eager to continue building strategic partnerships with the Asia-Pacific countries through ESCAP and remains fully committed to promote and protect the rights of persons with disabilities and accelerate action through creating more opportunities, protecting their rights, and ensuring they fully benefit from and can contribute to every aspect of our society. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of United Kingdom of Britain and Northern Ireland. And the next speaker on my list is the distinguished delegate of USA, whom I now invite to take the floor.
Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I am pleased to join you all in this important session of the Committee on Social Development. The United States values its partnership with countries in the Asia region as well as with ESCAP. As one of the largest and most consistent development partners, the United States provides around $11 billion annually in official development assistance worldwide. In the coming weeks, USAID will launch its Nothing Without Us USAID disability policy. This is an important update to the groundbreaking policy USAID first adopted in 1997. Intentional, sustainable, and meaningful inclusion of persons with disabilities across all areas of our work is key to working in partnership with countries to meet our collective development goals and potential. USAID has a long-standing commitment to disability inclusion. This has been evidenced in our adoption in 1997 of one of the first policies on disability and development by a bilateral development agency. That policy stated that USAID will not discriminate against persons with disabilities and will work to ensure the inclusion of persons with disabilities in its programs and activities. The United States, through USAID, has proudly worked to implement this policy over the past 20+ years, building relationships with various stakeholders, including organizations that represent peoples with disabilities. Our goal is to transform lives, communities, the economies in a way that is inclusive of all members of society, including people with disabilities. Much has changed since we first adopted that policy, and the world, including the Asia region, is in a different place. The vast majority of countries where we work have ratified or at least signed the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The Sustainable Development Goals provide a shared blueprint for global peace and prosperity with equity at their core, so that we leave no one behind. Our new policy emphasizes the importance of including people with disabilities in all decisions that affect them. This shift from nothing about us without us to nothing without us recognizes that issues affecting humanity also impact people with disabilities. By working with people with disabilities rather than for them, we can more effectively create inclusive development interventions. Our intent is to use the policy to inform approaches to all work across all the various sectors in which we work, whether mainstream or targeted programming for persons with disabilities. With respect to employment and economic empowerment of persons with disabilities, we intend to continue supporting promising approaches to include promoting access for persons with disabilities to skills and training to participate in the economy and engage in decent work in mainstream work environments that do not segregate persons with disabilities, do not reinforce stereotypes of suitable jobs for persons with disabilities, and engage and ensure wage parity with non-disabled workers. Promoting the adoption and effective enforcement of non-discrimination laws in employment and working with employees to understand their obligations, including with respect to provision of workplace adjustments and reasonable accommodations. Addressing social protection systems to account for the added costs many persons with disabilities face due to societal inequities and barriers, and ensure persons with disabilities need not fear or of access to social protection or other supports as consequence of participation in the labor market. We look forward to opportunities to partner with persons of disabilities, state actors, the private sector, and others as we collectively strive to create a more fair, more equitable, and more inclusive world for all, including persons with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegates of USA. The next speaker on my list is the distinguished delegates of Sri Lanka, whom I now invite to take the floor.
Ayubowan, Honorable Chair, distinguished delegations, ladies and gentlemen. I am going to present the progress in securing the rights of persons with disabilities in Sri Lanka, while recognizing that there is still more to be done. Since ratifying the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in 2016, Sri Lanka has worked to align its laws with this important agreement. A new bill, soon to be presented in Parliament, will build on the Protection of Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act number 28 of 1996, which already provides key legal protections. Social care is a central part of our efforts. In line with the Jakarta Declaration, it has been actively promoting the empowerment of persons with disabilities. The government provides a monthly allowance among low-income families in persons with disabilities, along with many other services, such as housing grant, medical support allowance, education allowance, and help for employment. We also offer assistive devices and support for sports and music activities. Moreover, provide hearing aids, distribute free spectacles, and conducting mobile clinics are also other facilities. Social Services Department provides vocational training for disabled children for their empowerment. The National Council for Persons with Disabilities monitors registered organizations, as well as council members with disabilities participate for decision-making process, following the principle of nothing about us without us. This inclusive approach ensures good governance and high-quality services. To address concerns of violations of rights, a dedicated hotline has been set up. It helps them to direct where to seek help and to resolve their issues quickly. Sri Lanka is planning several important steps, including the approval of the Sign Language Act, insurance coverage, better access to public spaces, and issuing identity cards to ensure smoother inclusion. In conclusion, though we achieve great progress, still there are works to be done to ensure a fully inclusive and supportive society for them. With your continuous support, we can achieve this target within the next decade. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegates of Sri Lanka. The next speaker on my list is the distinguished delegate of Thailand, whom I now invite to take the floor.
Excellency, distinguished guests, on behalf of the Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities and the Royal Thai Government, we aim to drive and encourage persons with disabilities to thoroughly and equally access rights and welfare, both in nationally and international level. We are working in compliance with international obligations on disability, such as Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, CRPD, SDGs, and the Jakarta Declaration on Asia and the Pacific Decade of Persons with Disabilities. While responding to the international laws, we also enforce our national laws by adhering to the Empowerment of Persons with Disability Act, which has been consistently developed and amended in order to entitle all persons with disabilities to fully access to the rights and welfare. For example, people with disabilities are integrated to the accessible procurement process. These amendments are an aim to eliminate the discrimination against persons with disabilities in any forms and empower persons with disabilities and their caregivers to live in a society happily and independently without leaving no one behind. For the past years, DEP has been working incessantly for persons with disabilities in Thailand to truly and systematically access to the rights and welfare by transforming the physical disabled ID card to the online one, and which facilitates the lifestyle of persons with disabilities to access information and support their wants through their ways through online platform within their hands. In the meantime, we also developed and upgraded the disability service centers to be more convenient and inclusive by launching the one-stop service project, which are collaborated with several partners such as Ministry of Public Health and the local administrative organizations to link the data to one another. For medical service, we also have launched the project called 72,000 assistive devices for the disabled project. This project is part of the government's plan to celebrate the 6th circle birthday anniversary of His Majesty King Mahawachiralongkorn Prawachiratchaklao in past July, with the aim to provide persons with disabilities within the country the proper assistive devices with the purpose that persons with disabilities will regain their independence and equality in daily life. Apart from the mentioned activities in the international level, we have a mutual project to promote and develop the quality of life of persons with disabilities by collaborating with APCD, supported by ESCAP, launching the project on the strengthening disability data collection and analysis mechanism to enhance the national implementation and monitoring the CRPD with the aims to enable all stakeholders to explore various ways to improve and develop disability inclusive development, providing an overview of the disability implementation in Thailand and integrating the international approaches. Last but not least, we would like to take this opportunity to recall and carry on the perpetual efforts of our unforgettable, beloved disability world leader, Montien Buntan, for his strong advocacy in disability inclusive development towards living on no one behind world. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegates of Thailand. Are there any other member states who wish to take the floor? Distinguished delegates of Iran. I now invite to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Distinguished colleagues, the Islamic Republic of Iran will make every effort to enhance and expand the necessary services for persons with disabilities both quantitatively and qualitatively, to implement the Jakarta Declaration. In the Islamic Republic of Iran, over 1.6 million persons, spanning from infancy to old age and encompassing various types of degrees of disabilities are covered. And the Islamic Republic of Iran delivers rehabilitation services through a network of educational and rehabilitation centers. This is notwithstanding the fact that the unilateral sanctions have hindered progress on rehabilitation items and specialized services and affected the economic capabilities of individuals receiving such services. Now, the global community and human rights forums must address these critical questions. Which human rights principles are consistent with and justify the sanctions imposed on the Iranian community of persons with disabilities? I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Iran. Are there any other member states who wish to take the floor? I see none. We now move to the intergovernmental organizations, UN entities, and specialized agency and civil society. Please limit your intervention to 3 minutes because we are running out of time. The first speaker on my list is Asia Pacific, distinguished delegate from Asia Pacific Disabled People's Organization United, ADDPO, whom I now invite to take the floor.
APDPO United is the network of DPOs across our Asia-Pacific region to work on the implementation and monitoring the new decade. It is a regional unified organizations with disabilities in Asia and the Pacific for effective implementation of the Incheon strategies. To start for the implementation of the Jakarta Declaration on the Asia and Pacific Decade of Persons with Disabilities, DPI Korea main secretary of APDPO United will continue to serve as a representative organization of the second term of APDPO United in the ESCAP working group for the Jakarta Declaration. During the new decade, we will focus on putting the International Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities into practice. It is important that persons with disabilities who are the subject of the International Convention of the Rights of the Persons with Disabilities are well represented and participated. Accordingly, persons with disabilities in the Asia-Pacific region who are the parties concerned are organizing of the APDPO United, an alliance of persons with disabilities in the region, in order to act as the main force to claim our right in the new decades. We will form a new organization and take a direct part in decision-making in order to independently monitoring the activities of the government in various countries, call for the observers of the International Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and confidently exercise our decision-making rights. In the context of the government, the ESCAP and the arrangement for the first Jakarta Declaration on the Asia and Pacific Decade of Persons with Disabilities. With that valuable outcome, DPI Korea, in collaboration with the APCD and DPI AP, hosted UNCRPD training programs held from last September in Seoul, Korea, brought together representative 14 DPOs from 7 South Asia countries. Also, resource person from DEP Thailand, ESCAP, Agenda Indonesia, ASEAN Disability Forum, Australian DPOs, and National Human Rights Commission of Korea. Besides the CRPD training, we have hosted keynote speeches and main discussion based on the 6 priority areas of Jakarta Declaration on the Asian and Pacific Decade of Persons with a Disability. Harmonize national legislation with CRPD and promote meaningful participation of the diverse disability groups, such as the institutionalization, employment, culture and art, accessibility, women with disabilities, and special inclusive education. Lastly, we will strengthen our capabilities independently and protect our right through mutual exchanges, encouragement, and organization. By doing so, we will take our seat at the negotiating table with the government, representatives of various nations who will discuss plans for the new decade. And we will lay out our futures. We will also execute action plan and
please wrap up.
strategies through non-governmental activities with our DPO coalition of Asia Pacific Organization of Persons with Disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, I again remind all the delegates to limit the statement to 3 minutes. Now I invite Economic Research Institute, delegates from Economic Research Institute for Asia, ASEAN and East Asia to take the floor.
Honorable Chair, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to stand on behalf of AREA, Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia at this session. As a research institution, AREA strives to address pressing issues and stands at the forefront of supporting policymaking in ASEAN region. Today, I wish to highlight AREA's ongoing efforts in addressing the needs of persons with disabilities and align them with the objective outlined in the Jakarta Declaration on the Asian and Pacific Decade of Persons with Disabilities, which focuses on advancing disability rights and fostering inclusion. This summer, AREA published 2 research reports discussing essential issues from the perspective of persons with developmental disabilities and their families. The first research report, Current Status and Issues of Healthcare Policies for Persons with Developmental Disabilities in Southeast Asia, highlighted the urgent need for more comprehensive, accessible, and consistent healthcare services, and enhanced support in education and employment for persons with disabilities. The second research report, Development of a Coaching-Based Guidebook to Enhance the Quality of Life of Parents of Persons with Developmental Disabilities in Southeast Asia, was designed to equip parents with effective strategies and resources to better manage the challenges of raising a child with a developmental disability. Building on the insights gathered from these previous research, we are ready to take proactive measures to support persons with disabilities. In collaboration with the Ministry of Social Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia, we are engaged in proposing the ASEAN-Japan Initiative on Developmental Disabilities Project. This initiative aims to enhance awareness and support systems for persons with developmental disabilities. We believe that by fostering societal involvement, awareness, and collaboration among governments, academia, private sector, NGOs, and international organizations, we can realize the vision of this initiative and contribute to the objectives and priorities outlined in the Jakarta Declaration. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I now invite delegates of All Blind Union Asia Pacific to take the floor.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the World Blind Union Asia Pacific, WBUAP, I extend our warmest greetings and express our solidarity with our sisters and brothers with disabilities. We particularly advocate for the unique and distinct needs and challenges for people who are blind or partially sighted. Tomorrow, 10th of October, we will celebrate World Sight Day, which falls on the second Thursday of every year. The theme of this year's celebration is Children, Take Care of Your Eyes. 15th of October is International White Cane Safety Day, which promotes safe and independent travel using the white cane. For people who are blind or partially sighted, the most important accessibility need is access to accessible information, such as accessible publication, accessible websites and mobile services, audio description, ensuring the built environment, including footpaths and public transport, are safe and accessible for the blind and all pedestrians. Goods and services should also be disability-friendly. WBUAP calls not only for the ratification of the Marrakesh Treaty, but the full implementation of the treaty to bring its benefits of greater access to printed information to the grassroots. We should harness the potential of artificial intelligence in improving the quality of life of people who are blind and partially sighted. In addition, in line with the 6 priority areas of the Jakarta Declaration, WBUAP amplifies the voices of our members and member states to take positive action to accelerate its implementation. In conclusion, WBUAP calls for member states to prioritize the rights and needs of people who are blind or partially sighted by taking concrete steps to implement the above recommendations. We will together be able to build a more equitable and inclusive society. The full text of my intervention has been sent to the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you. I now invite delegates of Disabled Peoples International Asia and Pacific to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It might be a big list of speakers under this agenda item. So DPI Asia Pacific would like to briefly introduce our 6 commitments to the implementation of the Jakarta Declaration as a member of the ESCAP working group to promote Asia and the Pacific Decade of Persons with Disabilities. Number 1, DPIAP will continuously collaborate with various organizations in information collection to monitor the harmonization of domestic legislation with the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and the implementation of such laws, in particular accessibility, education, work and employment, and independent living in the community. Number 2, DPIAP will empower and build the capacity of persons with disabilities participating in the governmental committees and parliaments at both national and local levels, ensuring the meaningful participation in decision-making processes throughout the region. Number 3, DPIAP will promote accessibility for all, both in terms of services and facilities, with special consideration for intersectionality and underrepresented groups among persons with disabilities. DPIAP also encourages the involvement of multiple sectors to achieve this goal. Number 4, DPIAP will actively engage the business sector in disability issues not as a target of charity, but as a business opportunity. Number 5, DPIAP fully recognizes that the supply chains established in this region have a global impact. So that is why the DPIAP will raise awareness of universal design principles within the business sector, contributing to the improved accessibility worldwide. Number 6, the DPIAP reaffirms the importance of addressing intersectionality in every aspect of the Jakarta Declaration's implementation and calls on member states to give this high priority. In conclusion, DPIAP requests a sound partnership and collaborations with all sectors, including government, organization, persons with disabilities, business sector, and civil society organizations to promote these efforts. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I now invite delegates of Rehabilitation International to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair, Excellencies, delegates, civil society friends. I speak on behalf of Rehabilitation International, which was established in 1922 and has national members working consistently on the rights of persons with disability across the globe. Today, I will emphasize on three critical intersectional dimensions that are crucial to understand the issues facing persons with disabilities and specifically women with disabilities. The first is related to Article 5 of CRPD and SDG 1, that is poverty, which despite the promises of globalization, market reforms, and technological changes, disability-driven deprivation is increasing in many countries. The situation is exacerbated when disasters and climate change takes place, creating displacement and resulting in increased morbidity, mortality, and poverty among persons with disabilities. Poverty is being compounded by not a very easy market relationship and the severe increase in the frequency, severity, and intensity of the extreme climatic events where persons and women with disabilities remain exposed to higher risk. The health and rehabilitation services require accessibility to many persons, specifically women, due to out-of-pocket payments and limited income. The response to poverty can only be created when all economic actors join hands to eradicate it. And this, I think, can come through the Jakarta Declaration. The second major issue is on the application of universal designs in accessibility in both built and environmental and virtual environment, notably in schools and hospitals, who might not use universal designs. New technologies and artificial intelligence are changing the world and seem promising, but remaining barriers must be removed for persons and women with disabilities at this early stage of implementation and not after the problems start to impact. The third, and we find most important issue, is related to women with disabilities. Many gender governance policies in the socio-cultural context that is embedded in societies and are dominated in today's institutions. Gender-based violence needs to be tackled, sexual, reproductive, and health rights services and levels of literacy strengthened. Social protection coverage in many countries is not specifically targeted to women with disabilities. For instance, banking service and insurance remain outside the access of most women. The situation is usually exacerbated with both climate change and increasing conflicts across the globe. As UN ESCAP member states meet to evaluate the Jakarta Declaration and lay the path for the fourth decade of disability, we would like to collaborate with all members to provide sustainable solutions to achieve a more inclusive society for persons with disability. We recommend that poverty can be eradicated by consulting persons and women with disabilities about the strengthening of labor markets for disability inclusion. We need to emphasize on UNESCAP's ideas of increasing investment in developing technical and financial capacities of organizations of disabilities and would require private and public sector finances. And finally, we request that UNESCAP not to set up a fund to support poverty alleviating social protection mechanisms for women with disabilities in lower and middle income countries with the assistance of private sector, and if required, the technical support of Rehabilitation International will be possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I now invite delegates of International Foundation for Electoral System to take the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. We, IFES, an international nonprofit organization that supports the rights of all people to participate in political life, recognize the critical role of persons with disabilities in their communities. Since 2011, our project, Agenda, the General Election Network for Disability Access, has supported persons with disabilities and their organizations to take part in political life and policy-making processes. Our network and its members in 8 ASEAN countries and Timor-Leste, an ASEAN observer, promote inclusion of persons with disabilities and promote the ASEAN Enabling Master Plan, a regional policy document. We align our work closely with the Jakarta Declaration and support this vision, which calls for meaningful participation of women and girls, men and boys with diverse disabilities through direct representation from organizations of persons with disabilities in our planning, our implementation, and our support for them making direct decisions and ensuring full participation in policies, programs, and political processes that involve their lives. OPD partners in the Agenda Network continually promote the meaningful engagement of persons with disabilities in the implementation of the Enabling Master Plan through its 76 key action points that holistically cover inclusion of persons with disabilities in all sectors, such as disaster risk reduction, political participation, and social development. This has enabled a strengthened regional disability inclusion framework in alignment with the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and complementing regional frameworks, such as the Jakarta Declaration. Despite the progress of regional policy gains, we must now recognize the gaps and intersectionality of persons with disabilities from across all diverse and complex identities, such as women and girls with disabilities, older persons with disabilities, ethnic minorities with disabilities, and those with psychosocial and intellectual disabilities. They are significantly underrepresented in leadership, participation in public life, and access to justice, and they have less access to resources and economic opportunities. We call on member states to prioritize the engagement of persons with disabilities in political life, policy making, and policy implementation by strategic effort to mainstream the ASEAN Enabling Master Plan domestically in each state. We reinforce the critical need to meaningfully increase the engagement of women and girls with disabilities, older persons with disabilities, ethnic minorities with disabilities, and those with psychosocial and intellectual disabilities in participatory decision-making in our development efforts. Partnership must go beyond consultation. Partnership means real engagement and diverse representation of persons with disabilities in decision-making forums, such as this one. Ensuring representative leadership will be increasingly critical in a world more prone to disasters and other climate impacts, which, as we know, disproportionately affects persons with disabilities. In a world with finite resources,
Please wrap up.
climate change, increasing conflicts, and their disproportionate impact to persons with disabilities, this must happen now. Thank you.
Thank you. I now invite delegates of all network of users and survivors of psychiatric to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, distinguished delegates. The World Network of Users and Survivors of Psychiatry is proud to serve as a member of the working group on the ASEAN and Pacific Decade of Persons with Disabilities. We stand ready to work closely with all working group members and allies. On implementing the Jakarta Declaration, let me share some worrying context. WHO estimates that some 14% of the population in much of this region lives with mental health conditions. The worldwide incidence of declining mental health among youth has reached a dangerous phase. 4 in 5 employees in Asia may develop psychosocial issues. Asia has higher burnout rates than the global average. Thus, our focus on persons with psychosocial disabilities in mental hospitals and in the community are directly related to youth workers' mental health, economic productivity, and societal well-being. In much of the ESCAP region, stigma and discrimination prevail against persons with psychosocial issues. The medical model perpetuates excessive coercive measures, physical restraints, and biomedical interventions. Long-term psychiatric hospitalization is common with horrendous human rights violations. Some developed countries use their mental health budgets mainly for hospitalizing persons with psychosocial disabilities. In this bleak landscape, I congratulate the United Nations for guidelines on deinstitutionalization and the prevention of institutionalization. I'm heartened by Singapore's evolving good practice, the creation of an ecosystem that links individuals to the mental health care they need close to where they live when they need it. We welcome mental health ecosystem that accepts struggles with psychosocial issues as a normal part of everyone's health, with more inclusive services that respect individuals' choice in the community. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you. I now invite delegates of CBID AP network to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I represent CBID AP network this time, but speak on behalf of the COA Research and Consulting from Japan, in short, KRC. The KRC is a company mainly implementing technical cooperation project of JICA, and the KRC has been implementing several JICA projects in Mongolia, such as the project for the inclusive education from 2015, and the project to promote social participation for PWDs from 2016, and also the project to promote employment for persons with disability from 2021. Well, in short, we are the company with a high level of the expertise in the field of disabilities, and it is therefore we collaborated CBID AP to organize the CBID AP Congress in Mongolia 2019 and also Cambodia 2023. In Mongolia, we have been working to improve physical and information accessibilities and raise awareness of social model of disabilities and compile disability information, and also promote employment of persons with disabilities. We ensure the participation of the person with disabilities in all activities in those projects. As a result, we have produced a first disability white paper in Mongolia, improved monitoring system for physical accessibilities, and trained more than 200 job coaches with a grant system for them. And furthermore, improved the levy system and the legal employment rate, which is 4% in Mongolia. KRC is planned to continue our work in the field of disability, where although our work are now focusing on Mongolia, but we would like to expand and implement more projects in the Asia and the Pacific region. So we would like to work toward the realization of Jakarta Declaration with all of you. So if there are any governments, disabled people organizations, or development partners who are interested in work with us, we are very happy about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Excellency, distinguished delegates, we have now reached the end of this agenda item. Thank you for your statement, which have highlighted the efforts your governments or organizations have made toward implementing the Jakarta Declaration and ways forward to advance disability inclusion in the region through good practices, innovations, and lessons learned. Country intervention from delegations of these sessions highlighted the importance of disability inclusive policies, strategies, and actions that help us move forward with the effective implementation of the Jakarta Declaration. On this basis, I trust the committee will agree to the decisions as proposed in document ESCAP/CSD 8/5. I read now, to note the progress made in the implementation of the Jakarta Declaration on the Asian and Pacific Decades of Persons with Disability 2023 to 2032, and request the Secretariat to continue to support member states upon their request in implementing the Jakarta Declaration. Furthermore, the committee is invited to provide guidance to Secretariat on fostering innovative actions related to the 6 priority areas for disability inclusive development delineated in the Jakarta Declaration. If there are no interventions, we can consider the committee in agreement with these decisions. Now the USA.
Thank you. Just to request the language that we've requested across the other decisions regarding mandate and funding. Thank you.
Secretariat will take the note and make the necessary changes. Decision of this committee is contained in the background documents, ESCAP/CS8/5 will be included in the draft report of the committee as decision 4. Sorry. Now Japan.
Thank you. It may be helpful to put it up on the screen, but reading paragraph 34, which has the decision text, the last sentence doesn't make sense to include in a decision. It's not very standard to include this type of sentence in a decision. So I think it's a typo, so I just wanted to flag it. And we also support including the usual caveat that's done in the other resolutions, as the US said. So it's not supposed to be there, right? The last sentence.
Secretariat will clarify.
I would like, actually, it is correct that this is not in the nature of a decision, and we will take it out in the final version to be presented in the report tomorrow, ma'am. And just present the decision with the change proposed by the United States and the deletion of the last line. Thank you.
Okay. The decision of this committee is contained in the background document, ESCAP/CS8/5. With some amendment will be included in the draft report of the committee as decision 4 and consider agenda item 7, adoption of the report of the Committee on Social Development on its 8th session. Distinguished participants, this now concludes our deliberation for this agenda item. And now, Excellency, distinguished delegate, we will now turn to our final agenda item of today's sessions, namely the other matters. Excellency, distinguished delegates, it is my pleasure to report on behalf of the Bureau on the status of the credential of representative of members to the 7th session of the Committee on Social Development in accordance with the Rule 12 of the Rules of Procedure of the Commission. The Bureau of this 8th session of the Committee on Social Development examined the credential of the representative of 28 member states submitted in accordance with the Rule 11 of the Rules of Procedure of the Commission and found them to be in order. The Bureau decided to defer any action on the credential pertaining to the representatives of Myanmar at the 8th sessions of the Committee on Social Development, pending a decision by the General Assembly on the representation of the Myanmar, and in line with the General Assembly Resolution 396B of 14 December 1950, acknowledging the report of the Credentials Committee of the General Assembly at its 78th sessions. May I take it that it is the wish of the committee to take note of the report of the Bureau. I see no objections, so it is so decided. Are there any matters that delegates would like the committee to consider? I see no request for the floor. This now concludes our deliberation today. The Secretariat will prepare a draft report of this meeting for our review by noon tomorrow, Thursday, 10 October. The report will be made available online and emailed to the list of the participants. If there are any major changes to suggest to the draft report, we would request you to provide the written text to the Secretariat before 2 p.m. so that they may enter it on the screen for consideration by all delegations. We will resume the committee tomorrow at 2 p.m. in Conference Room 2 to consider the agenda item 7, adoption of the report of the committee at its 8th sessions. I look forward to your participation tomorrow. I would like to invite the MC to provide some housekeeping announcement if there are any.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I am pleased to invite you to 3 side events scheduled tomorrow. There will be launch of the Asia-Pacific Regional Companion Report of the World Social Protection Report between 9 and 10:15 a.m. in Meeting Room H with light refreshments for participants. From 10:30 a.m. to noon, there will be a special event on briefing on the Asia-Pacific preparations for the Second World Summit for Social Development in 2025 in Conference Room 4. Finally, between 12:30 and 1:45 p.m., there will be a side event on social protection to leave no one behind in Meeting Room G. Your participation and engagement will be greatly appreciated, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you, and I wish you all a pleasant evening. Thank you.
Thank you, MC. I now declare this meeting adjourned.